Lori Houston's News for the Heart is dedicated to helping you give a voice to your own soul. Our hearts have the power to free us from pain and the struggles that keep us from awakening to our true essence. Join Lori now as we delve into our heart and soul to find the path that will open us to the possibilities and lead us to the life we love to live.
And good afternoon. This is News for the Heart. Well, I can't believe it's already the end of February, but it is definitely the end of February. And being the last Tuesday of the month, I have my awesome co-host, Tom Campbell, with me. We don't know where the show's going to go, but we're going to start with a few things because none of them felt like full shows, but all of them sort of similar. Definitely have to do with love versus fear. So I thought we'd look at powerless, how people are feeling kind of powerless. And with that, Tom mentioned that a lot of people are feeling overwhelmed. Whether those two come together, well, they sort of do, for sure. One of the things I like to talk about with my clients when I'm talking is about letting go versus giving up. So letting go feels more empowering, so not powerless. Giving up feels like you've totally lost hope, maybe given up more than keeping your heart open, and it feels much more fearful. So does powerless, and so does overwhelm. So we'll maybe end with the letting go part because that's a positive. But it's just, I guess these are things that we're all sort of feeling. I'm really confident that 2024 is going to be a good year for all of us, but we're still kind of getting through the mucky. Right now it's raining and thunderstorming, which, considering this is February in Canada, this is not your typical day. So yeah, we like to complain about the weather. All right, so let's go with starting with maybe powerless and feeling very overwhelmed. They're not the same for sure. But so let's talk about how each of them are a little bit different and how we can work through them, start feeling, because none of it's really true. It's just that's where we tend to, it's almost like a default fear thing. We go there instead of saying, wait a minute, I can change this story. So let's start there. I know Tom will take off and well, you probably won't hear from me again, but maybe you will.
Oh, Lori.
I know, right?
Yeah, I get in these long speeches and keep going.
Yeah,
Anyhow,
it's
at
good.
least I have a nice, bright, colorful shirt on today.
Oh, wow, you do.
That'll cheer some people up who are
There you go.
feeling overwhelmed.
Yes.
The reason that we feel overwhelmed, also the reason we often feel like, we need to give up, is because things aren't the way we want them. That's the fundamental reason. If things were the way we want them, oh, well, we would just be so happy. Everything would be great. But they're not the way we want them. And we see things that are dysfunctional among our loved ones. The husband won't pick up his dirty underwear and the kids won't do their homework, and life is just full of little things like that you'd like to be better. You don't get enough attention. Your life is too busy. Everybody around you is always busy. And if they're not busy, they're exhausted. They don't need to go to sleep. So the amount of attention you get is small because everyone's kind of working all the time. You go to work, and then you come home and work, a different kind of work, but you come home and now you have to fix dinner and clean up and do other kinds of things, and children, and by the time, say, you and your significant other get a chance to just have some time, well, you're exhausted and need to go to sleep. So, and you do that for month after month,
Yeah.
and you start to feel a little lonely, start to feel a little um, like somehow you're not engaged in life. You kind of sitting on the sidelines, and life is going by,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't feel satisfied. But there's really nothing that you can really put your finger on that is really the problem. It's just a whole bunch of little things conspiring to not give you what you want. And I would also say what you need. So that way, I think a lot of feelings come up like that. Now, you look at the news feed and you see what's going on out in the world, and you don't like that. There's so much negative stuff going on out there. People grabbing for power.
Mm.
And in the process of them grabbing for power, they hurt or kill or maim, other people. And that doesn't seem to be a problem for them. That seems to be, in their mind, necessary. In your mind, it's entirely unnecessary.
Mm.
There are other ways to solve those problems that are so much better. And really, what's going on is they're creating even a bigger problem than they had before. They're showing, more entropy, more dysfunction, more hate, more, you know, negativity. And you see that, but of course, there's nothing you can do about it. Again, it's something you don't like, it's something you don't want, but there it is. And you have to deal with it. And then it's closer at home. Besides out in foreign lands, you have things happening at home. You have interactions with your government, or right now with the tax. This is tax time for us, probably for you too.
It is, yeah.
And you have to deal with, you see, you know, 20, 30% of your income disappear someplace. And you're wondering whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. Are we funding good things, or are we funding not so good things? So all in all, there's very few people who look at it, out at the world and out at life, and feel real happy about everything is just the way it's supposed to be. Okay, I feel good, I feel satisfied. But the reason that's so few people is because there's so few people who have that low in entropy that that's the way they feel, no matter what. Most of us are full of fears. That's high entropy. Most of us, because we're full of fears, we're also kind of self-centered. It's about us. And if we don't get things the way we want them, then we feel bad. We want to reach out and change things, manipulate things to be the way we want. So we holler at our husband to pick up his own underwear. We holler at the kids to go do their homework, you see. And that's us fixing the problem. We holler at people. Of course, that just makes the problem worse. Again, that doesn't solve anything. That just makes it worse. And it makes it worse because now the husband's grumbling and he's just not happy, and the kids are grumbling because they don't like being hollered at. So everything has gone from the way it was to even a worse space. And then you're frustrated with yourself and so on. This is kind of everyday life. This is what normal people are like.
Mm.
They want the world to be the way they want it. And if it's not, they try to change it. And they find out they can't change it. It's very, very difficult to change, because the reason that the husband is throwing his own dirty underwear on the floor instead of putting it in the hamper, and the kids are not doing their homework, is because they also see a world that isn't the way they want it. The kids see a world without homework. It's unfair that we have to go home and still do schoolwork. When we're home, school's out.
Right.
Just not fair.
Mhm.
And husband who just thinks very short term and figures you throw your clothes, dirty clothes on the floor and they magically disappear and end up in the hamper all by themselves. So why should you take that unnecessary step? Somebody else takes care of that for you.
Mm.
And it's such a small thing, so that's self-centeredness, you see. The kids don't want to do their homework. That's self-centeredness. I'd rather play. What about me? What about what I want to do? You see, so everybody's got some self-centeredness. The person that sees both the unruly husband and the unruly children, they would like to fix that. But you can't really fix it by lecturing or by fussing. That doesn't work. And of course, the traditional way is if you make yourself and everybody around you miserable, that will force change. If mom is not happy, nobody's happy, kind of a paradigm. If you make enough fuss and create enough entropy, eventually people will change just because the pain level has gone up. Because if mom just hollers at you or your wife just hollers at you, it's just a small amount of pain. She does that all the time. You just brush that off like it didn't even happen because that's just life in this house. We holler at the kids, we holler at each other, and it's nothing to be too, it's not too painful. But if you escalate it till it's really painful, then you can force your way. You can force other people to do what you want, but only at a cost that is twice as high as what you accomplish. Yes, you can do that. That's why the child, lies down and screams and bangs his head on the floor because he's trying to be so, so much of a problem that he'll get what he wants. That's kind of a standard tactic, but it usually has the opposite effect. Creates negative attitudes in everybody else toward the person who's doing that. And pretty soon, even your best friends won't like you anymore, if you apply that tactic. So what's the solution? Well, you'll probably be surprised about this, but it's letting go of fear, getting rid of ego, which seems to be the solution for everything that bothers us. And in fact, it is. So in one way, if you do work on letting go of your fear, finding the fear and getting rid of it, you're not only solving the problem right now that's annoying, but you're solving lots of other problems too. You're solving all your problems, not only at home, but at work and with your friends and with your family. I mean, you're solving all the problems all at once. You're making life is going to get much, much better. And you're going to be much, much happier just to do that. So that's why people feel powerless, because things aren't the way they want, and there's just nothing they can do about it. They just can't manipulate it. They've tried. It just doesn't work. It's still bad, and they would, like to maybe drop out or quit. What was the word you used? Not drop out or quit, but give up.
Give up, right.
Yeah. They might want to give up and just kind of be depressed.
Right.
Because there's nothing much they can do. So that's always an option. You can give up and be depressed. Just sit and mope around and give everybody very short answers because you're just depressed and you don't really want to do anything, go anywhere, or anything else. You're just going to sit here and be miserable because things aren't the way you want them to be. So that's one way, but that's hardly an advantage. It's not like, oh, wow, I solved that problem. I'm depressed. What a great solution. That's a terrible solution. So giving up is about the worst possible of all the choices that you have. Giving up is is the worst of all of them. Well, maybe not. Maybe the being as obstreperous, mean, nasty, pushy as you can, forcing everybody to your will just by causing them pain. That's probably the worst choice.
No.
Then second worst choice is giving up. Yeah, giving up is a really bad idea because it doesn't. It's got no. There's no light at the end of that tunnel. That tunnel just gets darker and darker and darker the more you go down it. There is no light at the end of that tunnel. There's only more and more darkness. So
And
that's a
giving up suggests it's all about me, where it's more,
sure.
right? It's not about other, where when you said the worst would be, to be angry and throw everything out on somebody else, that's about other. So that would definitely interfere with our ascension. But when it's just about us and depressed, that again obviously will either show up and manifest in different ways, which can be anger, but the one is more self-destructive where the other is hurting others as well.
Yes.
I mean,
But when you're depressed, you hurt others as well.
yeah.
Uh, Everybody that has to be around you
Yeah.
is is what not made happy and is made unhappy by your depression.
Right.
Everybody you interact with.
Yeah.
And even if it's just the social interaction of checking out at a grocery store, if you're depressed, that vibe of unhappiness just spreads everywhere. Yeah, it just permeates. The people 10, 20 feet away from you pick up on that unhappiness. Anybody that talks to you, anybody that looks at you,
Right.
that's a negative thing that is just impossible to miss. Now they may not get it intellectually, but emotionally and intuitively, nobody misses that. That depression affects people all over, and they don't like the effect.
No.
They want you to go away. They want to get away from you as soon as they can. When you're depressed, nobody wants to be around you because your energy, your consciousness is putting out a vibe that is, I don't know, just chases people off. It's really a bad vibe. So it does affect everybody. It affects everyone around you. It's not just you, but all the people that interact with you, all the people that need you, that you're part of something bigger. Unless you live on an island by yourself, you're part of something bigger. No matter how much time you spend in your room or whatever, you really are a part of a bigger thing. You interact with people, and people depend on you. And when you withdraw and get depressed, or even if you don't withdraw, you just go through your life like a zombie and you're depressed, that hurts everybody. And maybe that's your purpose, getting even. You can hurt everybody, give them the silent treatment sort of thing, be depressed. But that hurts yourself most and hurts others, but it doesn't do any good for anybody. It's like I say, that tunnel just keeps getting darker and darker. It's not like, well, if you do this, everybody will be happier eventually. No, everybody will be more and more unhappy eventually. So the situation that you're in will degrade and get worse over time. So even what little bit you have will start to slip away if depression is your choice. Okay? But being depressed is typically a very self-centered thing to do. It's a, oh, woe is me kind of a thing, that nobody appreciates you. Nobody really cares about you. Nobody is doing the things they should do that would make you happy. Nobody wants to make you happy. Everybody just wants to use you to get advantages in their own life. And it goes on and on and on like that. So you see, you're a victim. Everybody else is a user or a perpetrator. And that's a trap that's hard to actually climb out of.
Yeah.
Because you poison a lot of the relationships around you. People don't want to be around you. People learn to avoid you and learn to not like you. So you poison a lot of relationships with that. And though others may tolerate you, they really don't like it. So that makes everything worse. That's not a good solution. That's not a good solution at all. It's the kind of the result of giving up. Once you give up, kind of depression is this way. Now, there's another way of giving up that is really a good idea. So maybe we ought to talk about good giving up too.
Okay, let's do that.
Giving up is when you give up trying to change the world to be the way you want it.
Ah,
Yeah, you give up trying to make things be the way you want. You give up manipulation. You give up teaching people how they should be more the way you want them. You know, you realize that, fussing at your kids, telling them, shouting at them or whatever is not helpful. There's better ways to approach that problem. And so you give up your depression. You give up your sense of, well, things aren't the way I want it. And you then, when you give up the need for them to be in any particular way, you just accept things and people the way they are and deal with them. Now, that doesn't mean that you can forget about helping your kids get their homework done. That just means you approach it differently. Instead of hollering at them, instead of approaching it through negativity, you approach it through positivity. Okay, Georgie, let's see your math today. I know you're struggling with that. Where are you? Let's do some math problems. You do one and I'll do one. Turn it into something that's more fun. You have to work with it, but now that takes your time and it takes your energy to do that. And that's something you'll have to give, is your time and your energy. So you will start giving more and taking less, and everything will get better. Everybody will like you more. They like being around you. They're glad you're there. They're happy the kids will be happy you're their mom. Everything will just work so much better if you can give up the need to have things the way you want them. That's self-centered. So that's a giving up that is a really good thing. You can, give up all those old grudges that you've had, about the husband that won't pick up his dirty underwear, a grudge. You just don't like that. So you don't like him because he does that. Give all that up. That's just your ego. It's your fear. So if you can give those things up, then that's very positive. That's a lot different. So you give up the fear-based things and you embrace the love-based things instead of doing just the opposite. When you're depressed, when you're unhappy, when you're miserable, when you're trying to change everybody and it's just not working, you want the world to change, you want your family to change, you want your kids to change. You're doing just the opposite. You're giving up the love-based world and you're embracing the world of fear. So giving up can be a good thing, but embracing the world of fear and unhappiness and depression is just, that's the wrong way to go. It does not fix things. That just constantly gets worse. So that's something you need to just give up. Let go of your need for those things. Do the things you need to do. And when you do, you'll find that the probability that the dirty underwear gets picked up by your husband starts to get higher and higher because you are just no longer letting it bother you. And now he sees you doing it and he goes, oh, I really should be doing that myself, you see, but As long as you're going to be grouchy about it, well, he's certainly not going to do it then, because he's not going to let it seem like your grouchiness changed him. People don't like to be manipulated. As soon as somebody realizes that you're pushing them to do a particular thing, you're manipulating them to get the way they want, they push back. So even if he wanted to pick up that dirty underwear, he wouldn't be able to because you're pushing on him to do it. You're manipulating him to do it, and people don't like to be manipulated, so they don't.
The
They
one I
just
like most is I remember a story where she would never do the dishes, so she let the dishes just sit there and sit there and sit there, and eventually there was no more dishes. So he went out and bought more dishes instead of doing the dishes. It's like, well, that's one way of doing it.
solution. A little expensive, instead of putting them in the sink, just put them in the trash can.
Yeah.
Get paper plates.
There you go. That would have been harder.
Yeah, that would have been clever, but come back with paper plates.
Yeah.
In any case, yes, people know that they're being manipulated. They're being pushed by somebody. Somebody else wants me to act this way, and most people just resent that. They don't like being manipulated.
They push
Which
back.
means that they get their back up, and then they won't do that no matter how much you holler. So you holler at them more, and that just makes them more resistant. Think about difficulties parents have with their teenagers. It's usually that very thing that's going on. They're telling their teenagers how to live their life, what to do, what not to do. They're giving them, just like they did when they were 6 years old, where you had to tell them what to do because they didn't know. Well, you kind of get in that habit, and now they're 15 or 16 and you're still trying to run their life, and they resent it. They don't want you to run their life. They want to make their own mistakes.
Of course.
They have to make their own mistakes to learn. Well, you try to prevent them from making mistakes. That doesn't work. You've got to make your own mistakes. And you have to learn. And you see, it's a problem with us wanting to make things better. We're only trying to make things better. The kids would do better, would learn more if they did their homework. Everybody likes live in a neat house where things are picked up. So everybody would benefit by these things. So I'm just trying to make things better. But by manipulating people to get things better, you make everything worse. Not only they didn't do it today, they're not going to do it tomorrow either because you're pushing them to do it today. And everything is like that. One of my best illustrations is that if you have a pet, you have cats, Lori, but if you take one of your cats and you just put your hand on them and start to push them, they will instantly push back. Whatever it is you're doing, they will push back. And it's a reaction. If somebody pushes you, you tend to push back. You don't like that. Now, if somebody has a discussion with you, that's different than trying to tell you what to do. And at the end of that discussion, you kind of see their point. Well, that's different. But the discussion has to be positive. It can't be, okay, I'm telling you the way it needs to be. Here's our discussion. Here's what I want you to do. That's not a discussion. It has to be such that you leave them with the choice to do or not to do.
Right.
You've just told them, well, if you do it, here's the kind of things that happen. And if you don't do it, here are the kind of things that happen. And, make it simple so that they can understand how that works. And then let them make the choice. I say, but you have to make the choice. You can make either choice. I just want you to know there are, consequences. Every choice has its consequences. And these are the consequences. And if you choose that, you're not going to do these things, then here are the consequences. And what will happen is, of course, they'll choose not to do those things at first because they're going to make their point, right? That they make their own choices because they have free will. But actually, when they've made their point, they see the wisdom in doing it the way that's better in the long term rather than what's easier in the short term. It's easier not to do your homework in the short term. It's easier to throw your stuff around and not pick them up in the short term. But it's worse in the long term. In the long term, you're destroying potentiality. You're destroying relationships. You're doing all this, in the long term, you're creating all this havoc. And children particularly, adults as well, but particularly children, have a hard time seeing long term. Sure. They only see tomorrow, maybe the day after that. And that's about as far as their vision can take them. Partly because they're young, they are self-centered. And when you're only concerned about yourself, then your vision doesn't go out very far. So you have to have a talk that shows them some long term. Okay, you have free will. I'm not going to holler at you if you do this or do that, or if you don't do your homework, then you just won't turn it in. You'll get poor grades, and here's where that leads. You won't understand what's going on when you get to the next lesson because you won't have done the homework and practice, and you won't be very good at it. And the other kids will be better at it than you are. Eventually, maybe they'll put you in a class with the slow kids, who none of which do their homework either. And maybe that's where you belong, if those are the choices you make. So you explain to them where this is going in the long term. And then you say, okay, your choice. I won't holler at you anymore about doing your homework. You're old enough to figure that out by yourself. Now, here's the long term. If you do your homework, you'll be more prepared than the other kids. When you get the lesson tomorrow that they teach, you'll understand it more easily. So the next day, your homework will be easier because you will have understood what the lesson was the day before. And then instead of taking a half an hour to do your homework, you'll probably be able to do it in 10 minutes because it'll be much easier for you. The teacher will like you because you're one of the better students, and the other kids will look up to you because you're one of the better students. So your choice, but you're being honest about it. These are the things. You don't sugarcoat, make the choice that you don't want them to take sound awful and horrible. Oh, your life will be ruined, you'll die within years, and don't do anything like that. It has to be, but they know that's just more manipulation. Mm-hmm. You have to say the way it is. And you could say, or maybe nothing will happen. Maybe the teacher won't notice that you're doing better. Maybe, they won't notice that until you actually get better at the subject. Or maybe not this. And so you go over all the possibilities, honestly, the things that are likely to happen, and then let them do it. And then you'll find out that your children start becoming responsible. They start acting not like 6-year-olds. They start acting like 15-year-olds, taking responsibility for things because they begin to see the long-term ups and downs of things. And it's the same with, picking up your underwear or something else. Here's what it does. You can do that. And I'll continue to pick it up because I don't like the mess on the floor. It bothers me. So I'll clean it up if you throw them down there. But here's what it does. Here's the long term on it. It's just it's like a refusal to cooperate with keeping the house neat. It's like, I don't want to do it. Somebody else needs to do it for me. That's shirking your responsibility onto other people. And in general, other people don't like that. Mm-hmm. You should take responsibility for the mess, to clean up the messes you make. If you make a mess, then you need to clean it up. And they may say, well, I was going to get around to that, but I just hadn't gotten to it yet. You can say, all right, that's fine. Take as much time as you need. But if it gets to the point that they start to accumulate, and the pile gets bigger, then, I'll do something about it because I share this room and I don't want to live in a room that's that messy. Messy rooms are high entropy rooms. And when you live in a high entropy environment, that high entropy kind of sloughs off on you, makes your life less low entropy. So you can just have these conversations very pleasantly. No threats, no no sugarcoating what you want and painting black what you don't want, because that's just another kind of manipulation. But you truly are trying to explain things and how you feel. And if they say, well, don't pick up, just let the pile be there. When it gets to be 2 feet tall, I'll move it. And you can say, well, I can't live with that. It's just the way I feel. When I see a mess, it needs to be cleaned up. So if you don't clean it up, then I'll have to clean it up, and it'd be shirking that responsibility of yours onto me. But I'll do it. No
And
problem.
I'll be looking under the bed for the clothes, and I'll be looking
Yeah.
at other places where you might not want me to look, but I have to do it.
So you just tell people that if you're honest and straightforward and we're not trying to manipulate, you're just trying to lay out the facts, then most people actually listen and understand. And they'll go, yeah, okay. Everybody's different. My level of that I can stand of high entropy environments is here. And somebody else's is lower than that. Somebody else's may even be higher than that. And you may give examples of that. What if the kids threw all the banana peels on the floor and did this and that? Would you make them pick it up, or would you say, it's just a little high entropy, it's not a big deal? And where would be the limit where you would decide that throwing the banana peels on the floor, along with when you peel the apple and all that stuff, just let it fall on the floor because that's easy. How much of that would you live with before you decided that you had to go clean it up? And then they get it, and they say, and then they get it, and they say, oh yeah, there is a limit. I see. And other people have different limits. So even if it doesn't bother you, you need to be aware that it does bother other people. The kids may not mind throwing their banana peels on the floor. They may think that was cool, but adults probably wouldn't like it. So the parents, would have this talk with the children. So you have to be a team player. You're on a team, whether you like it or not. You exist with, like I say, if you're not living by yourself on an island, you are interacting with other people. You are on a team. You have responsibilities. And you have responsibilities not to unnecessarily distress any of the people, that you interact with, whether it's at home or at work. If there's somebody there who just can't stand whatever, sneezes, maybe sneezes upset them. Well, if you feel a sneeze coming on, go out in the hall, leave the room. Try not to upset them. Don't say, well, that's stupid. Everybody sneezes, and damn well sneeze if I want to. Get over it. I'm so self-centered, I don't really give a damn about what you think. That's this extreme self-centeredness. That belongs at about the 2.5-year-old. That like that. That's where your level of maturity is about a 2.5-year-old when you have that kind of an attitude. So what you do is you try to accommodate. You say, well, what if when I sneeze, I don't just turn my head and kind of blow it out in the air? What if I do this? Would that be better? And they might say, yes, that'll work. That'll be better. Just capture that sneeze. Okay, so maybe that would work. So you think, well, that person's a little nut. They're really oversensitive. Well, there are a lot of people in the world who are a little nuts about all sorts of things. Accept that the way they are and try to deal with them positively. Okay, if it takes you some extra minutes of your time to do something, well, then that's okay. It's worth that to be positive in that relationship. You don't live by yourself on an island. Try to be nice and cooperative and caring about the people around you, even if they're being silly. See, that you think they're being silly is your judgment. That's your ego. I know those people shouldn't be that way. That's not a good way to be. They should be like me. I'm almost perfect. That's what we think. But instead of saying, well, that person's really off base, they're just going to have to, get over it and grow up and, toughen up a little bit. Well, maybe that's true, but you are not their designated teacher. That's not your thing in life, is to go around fixing people. Because let me tell you, that doesn't work. You will not fix them. You will only annoy them. And in that annoying, you're going to make your life and everybody else on the team's life less functional. When I say the team, could be a family, could be where you work, could be your neighbors. You're on all sorts of teams where, you and the neighbors are all on a team, make the neighborhood look nice. So house values stay up. Somebody wants to litter their house, their front lawn with beer cans or something, that pulls everybody's property values down. So you need to not be so self-centered as to just not give a damn what other people think. You have to realize that there's lots of people with lots of crazy ideas, and you'd like to have a good relationship with all of them. You don't have to teach them that their idea is crazy. You might want to consult with them nicely and kind of do something very positively if you think it would help. 9 times out of 10, it doesn't help. Don't expect, you're looking for a miracle there, but if it does help, then good. But you have to approach very gently, not with, here's what you need to do. Sure would be nice if you'd change your ways. They just have to accept people are all different, and they all have their own quirks and their own little idiosyncrasies, things they like, things they don't like. And if you can accept theirs, it'll make it easier for them to accept yours. Because yes, you are just like that too. You have your own little idiosyncrasies and quirks and things that you like and dislike. And people find you annoying too sometimes. They generally don't tell you because they know it wouldn't help. It would just make you angry. So look at it from that perspective as well. And if you look at yourself and say, well, I'm nearly perfect, that right away tells you something about your ego. Probably not true. If it is true, you wouldn't have to ask the question. Anyway, a little bit. You have any comments on any of that, Lori?
No, I think it's a good there were a lot of good things that you were mentioning. I'm not sure, maybe I guess definitions is one thing, because when I think of letting go versus giving up what you talked about in the beginning, and then the positive giving up sort of just felt like letting go to me. So I'm not quite sure if there's a difference, or if it's just a mindset, or if it's definition.
It's the word that comes after letting go, letting go of your fear. Good thing.
Yes.
Letting go of your ego. A good thing. Letting go of your need to teach everybody how they should be. A good thing. You see? And it's the same with giving up. Giving up your fear. It's a good thing. Giving up trying to teach everybody how they should be. That's a good thing. So it depends on what, the word giving up, it's not a bad word. Everybody that gives something up is on the road to, destruction. Giving up is just a word that says you stop doing what you're doing.
Right.
You give that up. And letting go just means you stop fussing after an issue or something that you're trying to do. Now, if the things that you're giving up and letting go are destructive things, well, that's all very good.
Mm-hmm.
If you're giving up, letting go of destructive. If the things that you are doing are constructive, then you want to keep those. So, when people get to the point they say, I'm just giving up. And if you know what they mean is, I'm giving up on what? Life. I'm giving up on parenting. I'm giving up on marriage. I'm giving up on civic responsibility. I'm giving up on all responsibility, everything's so rotten out there that I'm just going to crawl in my little hidey hole and stay there. I'm going to become just one person on an island. Well, you aren't one person on an island. And even if you pretend you are, you create dysfunction all around you because you're really not on an island. So that's the idea. So when the giving up is a negative thing, then it's a bad thing. It takes you in the wrong direction. Same with all the rest of the words we use. It depends on what they're giving up and why they're giving it up.
Mm.
That's what's important. Giving up, not needing to have things a certain way, that would solve a whole lot of problems if you could just give up on that one. And the way life really should work is that stuff happens and you get to deal with it, and you evolve or de-evolve depending on how well you deal with it. Deal with it positively, you evolve. Deal with it negatively, you de-evolve. And then something else happens. Stuff always happens. You're not alone on an island. Even alone on an island, stuff would happen, but still, you'd have to deal with it. That's true anywhere. But when you don't live on an island by yourself, then that stuff that happens is almost always mixed in with other people. It's not just that the coconut falls off the tree, it's not the stuff that happens. But in any case, stuff just happens anywhere.
Mm.
And when it does, you have to think about, well, how do I deal with that positively? Kids aren't doing the homework. Okay, that happens.
Mm.
Happens. Everybody's house, not just your house. Everybody's house has that happen. So how do you deal with it positively? Yeah, your husband or your wife throws her clothes around. How do you deal with that positively? And sometimes the way to deal with it positively is just to pick the stuff up and don't think about it. It's just not that big a deal. Don't let it gall you. Don't let it make you upset. Don't let it aggravate you. That may be it. Or a little conversation or whatever may help them grow up and become more responsible. But if it doesn't, and that's just the way they are, then all right, you've added an extra 15 seconds of work to your day. Big deal. Pick it up, and be cheerful about it, because now you live in a nicer environment where things are picked up. So sometimes that's the answer. It's not always that you can get things to be the way you want.
Right.
You don't always change. People don't change. They are who they are. And they have all kinds of qualities, some of which you'll like and some of which you won't like. But it's like, well, I'm waiting for a person that only has qualities that I like. Well, you'll still be waiting when you're 100 years old, because people like that aren't likely to come around too often. You're going to get people, if they're average, typical human beings, they're going to be full of fear. They're going to have ego. They're going to have all kinds of buttons and issues and things, and some of those you won't mind, and some of those will be a conflict with you. It's just the way it is. Most everybody's very fearful, and fears tend to clash. So, look at your own fears.
Right.
Did you grow up in a house where your mother constantly came in like a drill sergeant and inspected your room, every morning, and you just accepted that? And now you're kind of the drill sergeant yourself. You can't stand it when somebody throws something down. You want them to run and pick it up right now. Maybe that's your fear. Maybe the idea that you hit your limit of entropy and messiness way early than most people because of your background.
Right.
Or maybe you just enjoy pushing your will on other people, getting them to do what you want because that makes you feel powerful. Yourself too. Just examining other people and seeing, you have to examine yourself. And often in the long run, the right solution is just pick it up, forget about it. It's just not that big a deal. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. It just isn't worth being negative, because the negativity does harm, and that harm grows with time.
Right.
So for the 30 seconds it will add to your workload, how much dysfunction in the family is that worth?
Right.
Really none. Not worth any dysfunction. Pick it up, and don't pick it up and be grouchy about it. Don't pick it up and say, yeah, I hate this, but I'll pick it up.
Right.
No, you have to say, it's okay. I don't mind. I'll pick it up.
I
Because
mean it.
and mean it, because he and she, it's just the way they are. And you just have to accept that people are the way they are and let that be. Yeah, let that go, right? Don't keep coming back to it. Yeah, but I don't like it. I don't want it to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then you say, yes, but that makes me kind of self-centered. It needs to be my way or I'm unhappy.
Right.
Well, if things need to be your way or you're unhappy, start with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's called being self-centered. They need to be your way or you're not happy. And you'll find that, yes, of course, you're self-centered, because almost everybody is self-centered. So unless you get that, 1 in probably 20 million who doesn't have any ego or fear, then you're going to get somebody who does have ego and fear and issues and all sorts of things. And if that's going to be a problem for you, because they won't necessarily want to do things your way in order to match your needs and fears and quirks, then you'll never be real happy. You'll always be unhappy in your relationship. The level of satisfaction you can reach is just limited. It may be enough satisfaction to stay together or maintain a relationship, but it's not the kind of satisfaction that you could have if you got rid of your own fear and just let that stuff be, and not require things to be the best way, which is your way, of course. So if you just let things be a little dysfunctional, even though you know there's a better way, well, just let people be who they are. You'll find life will get a lot easier, even if it adds a little bit of time to your workday. Everything will get easier and better. And the magic is that when you do that, people eventually respond to that, and they notice, and they start making an extra effort to be helpful to you by maybe picking that stuff up. You see, that's the way that you can help people. Just be nice to them to the point that they notice, and then they begin to change a little bit in their behavior from their inside out. Fuss at them and they'll never change. Complain about it all the time, and you've got a constant war on your hands. And if you complain so much that they grit their teeth and do it anyway, then you've just created a big negative thing that's going to fester for the next 10 or 20 years. That's just going to fester and get worse. So that's
Really isn't going to make you
yeah.
feel any better.
No, and you won't feel any better anyway, because they're just doing it because you pitched a fit.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not what you want. You don't want people to do it because you're meaner than they are. Yeah, it all comes back to fixing yourself.
Always.
You fix yourself, then you don't mind doing things to people. You realize that everybody has different limits than you. So if your limit, you're a Mr. Neat or a Mrs. Neat, and you end up doing 90% of the needing, making things neat, well, accept that. Yeah. That's the way it is. That's what you want to do, so you do it. Don't blame others because you have to do all the neatness things. Why should I have to do all this? I am the master of the universe, not you. That doesn't play well. So just do it and be happy.
That ought to get a lot of people thinking.
Well, I tried to use little issues that everybody has.
No, for sure.
Just to get people thinking. Because if it's always about somebody else, then you don't learn anything. But if you hear an issue that's one of your issues, then you tend to pay attention a little more. So I tried to kind of use like kids that don't do their homework. That's an issue every parent has. Kids don't do their homework.
Every issue that every parent had when they were their own teenage self, but they didn't want to do it either. So
Yeah.
yeah, we forget. I don't know why we forget, but apparently we do.
I I never did any homework until I was probably at least a junior, maybe a senior in high school before I did my first lick of homework. To me, it was a philosophical issue. It was just wrong. It shouldn't be that way. It was unfair and unreasonable, and how you get up on your high horse and prance around. Yeah, what self-centered children do quite often. Yeah, it's like no, I wouldn't do any homework even if I wanted to. Even if I'd enjoy it, I wouldn't do it.
Wow.
So my son, my son had the same attitude. My younger son did the same thing. He never did any homework either. He figured it
They got to
when
be
he
home
left.
where you probably didn't, right?
Yeah, no, he got off with it. Yeah, he decided he didn't need to do the homework. For him, all the stuff they did in school was trivial. He needed a bigger challenge. He wasn't going to sit and do things that he considered like baby work. You know, I know all that stuff. I don't have to sit here and add, a column of, these little couples of numbers and stuff. He says, I can do that. I understand that. I got it well. I'm not going to do it. I already know it. So he would refuse. And of course, it would get him in trouble. And of course, his grades weren't all that good because he never turned in his homework, but he just couldn't care less. But he wanted to be a lawyer. And he said, "You're going to have to go to college to be a lawyer and you're going to have to get in." And he said, "Yeah, but you can get into law school with a good grade on the what is it, the law board,
That's true.
what is it? Not LSAT, is it?
No. Oh,
Maybe it is. Anyway, there's some test that you have to pass to get into law school that everybody takes. Well, he makes a 98 percentile on that and gets offers, from 10 different law schools. So please come to our school and we'll pay for, your tuition and books and all that kind of stuff. So he's right. He handled it his own way. So I didn't fuss him, but he didn't. He was okay. He knew he was okay. The teacher didn't like it because he wasn't conforming.
right.
They want everybody to conform. Yeah. But to
That's
this child, just saying the word conform would get his dander up.
I
So,
bet he's a good lawyer too.
yeah, he is a good lawyer.
I bet.
Yeah. He's,
Oh, well, this has been a good show. I think, going from, I really like the bit about the depression and how people kind of that giving up and how that's very difficult for everybody. And then acceptance, of course, is where we have to get to. But the biggest point was we got to work on ourselves first before we
yeah,
can try and change somebody else. Because
absolutely.
once we
Yeah,
choose to
often,
work on ourselves, we don't need to change anybody else because it's not
exactly.
relevant.
Yeah, that's the way it works.
All right. Well, you've been listening to News for the Heart. We've been getting the heart of what matters with Tom Campbell, and I don't know what we'll call this, but it should be interesting. We'll find something that's yeah.
You always do, Lori. You always come up with a good name. Pick a name that makes those people click to listen.
There you go. All right. Well, we'll be back next month, and I'm sure it'll be another great show. So until then, thanks, Tom.
You're welcome, Lori. Thank you.